Hey folks, David Stewart here. Let's talk a little bit about critics and criticism of the movies, and the more specific question, can the critics be trusted? Now, I've actually answered this question before in some prior content, but the answer was attached to some content that I think kind of obfuscates the actual answer. So I wanted to make a video specifically about this and talk about this a little bit. A little bit of background to this. I've been getting a lot of requests to review and analyze a recent movie on Netflix called Bright, starring Will Smith. And the idea of Bright is it's like an urban fantasy movie, and they're trying to, with Netflix, do a straight-to-streaming blockbuster style movie. Like, where I go out to the movies, you can watch a blockbuster right on your big screen TV at home. And I will be doing an analysis and review of that movie when I can get a little bit of free time to watch it, and then collect my thoughts and create some good qualitative judgments for you. But what's interesting about the movie, and why people really, I think, are interested in me reviewing it, is that there's a dissonance between the professional critics and what the audience is saying about this movie. So critics are like panning it. They're like, this movie's garbage. And then you have the audience, which seems to like it. I like it enough that Netflix, I think, is already going to make a sequel to it. So it's been, audiences are watching it. It's gotten a lot of views. Apparently it's gotten a lot of likes on Netflix. So why is there this disparity? Why are the critics and the audience not agreeing? Let's look at the flip side of that. As some people have pointed out, we have an aggregate review on like Rotten Tomatoes and some other sites for The Last Jedi, the last Star Wars movie, being much lower than the sort of critic approval rating. So the Rotten Tomatoes score is like at 50%, and then the critics are at like 90% or something. So why is there this dissonance? Why is there this difference there? I think there's a couple reasons, and I want to sort of give you some conjecture on those reasons, and also address the question, can the critics be trusted with it depends what you're getting out of the review, getting out of the criticism, and I'll explain that as well. So first of all, some reasons why they don't exist, or they don't correlate. Well, one reason is that critics might be composed of a different subset of people that have just different expectations and opinions than the general audience. So if their opinions are generally different than the general audience, it's because the critics don't align directly with the audience that's watching it in terms of like who they are, right? There's not like a direct representation there. So critics might be more liberal, and then the audience has more conservative people in it, and that's going to create a disparity. The critics might like pan this war movie as like conservative propaganda, but then the audience likes it because they're composed more of conservatives. So in other words, there's not an equal representation. That having those two match may not be like a valid expectation to begin with, because of the differences between those two groups, the general versus the specific group of critics. So that's the first big reason, and that's why I think you see most disparities, is that movie critics tend to be made up not of like, business majors, not of welders, not of the people that are sort of the regular folk, but people who were arts majors and that kind of stuff, and they're going to have a different set of criteria that they use to judge a movie and whether they enjoy it and things like that. You also have some other factors that go into it. A lot of professional reviewers are going to give a lot of positive reviews, and I don't have enough data to say this is more than a conjecture. I'll try to find some data on this, but I remember basically seeing that the amount of approval of criticism has gone up over the years, and what that kind of says to me, why do critics like seem to approve of more movies more often? If they're given advanced screenings, and if you're panning movies all the time, then the studios aren't going to give you that advanced screening that you need to get the review out on time before the movie comes out, or right when the movie comes out, to hit when the consumer demand for that review is highest. So if you are crapping all over the movies, as I do sometimes, you're not going to get those advanced screenings, and that's going to hurt your business. So you want to have a relationship with the movie studios as such that you can see the movies ahead of time and have access to that for your business. If you're completely honest, then maybe you think the movies suck. If you're completely honest, they'll take that away from you. You've been seeing that in video games with like review embargoes and that sort of stuff, or just not giving big time reviewers review copies because they don't want that person to review it. They're afraid that person's going to give a negative review. They've given negative reviews of the games in the past. And it's better to have a silence than to have a negative review. And this actually goes back a while too. I remember in the 90s, people like Roger Ebert and other big name critics, as a joke, started reviewing trailers because they weren't permitted to see the movie ahead of time to write an actual review of the movie. It became kind of a joke because the people who made the movie, that basically sends a signal that they're kind of like afraid of what the critics are going to say. So that's part of it. And you don't want to be that guy who's like, business is in danger because the movies won't give you the time of day. So you tend to review them generally positive. Another thing that I think is that audiences tend to like movies more than critics in general. So critics, if you want to err on one side, like, should I rate this positive or negative? If you rate it positive, you're probably going to find more people who agree with you than if you rate it negative. And you're going to probably wait to rate negative on movies that it's going to be really obvious, and most people aren't going to be upset with you if you trash it like some Rob Schneider movie or something like that. So that's another thing that I see. And I think this is the case with like YouTube channels. There was a lot of YouTube channels that just were like eating their cereal over Force Awakens when it came out, hyped it up, and I believed them, and I went and saw Force Awakens, and I did not like it. If you haven't seen my review of it, I did not like Force Awakens. And I felt so disappointed and so misled because people talked about all these things that they liked about it, and it's like I saw the opposite when I saw the movie. And I think that was just, they were so wanting to play into that hype. They were so wanting to be agreeable to people, knowing that people would like the movie, that they didn't want to err on any kind of side of negative judgment. And indeed, people tend to get a little bit aggressive sometimes when something has a negative review and they think positively of it. And I've definitely been on the receiving end of that, for sure. So maybe sometimes people want to kind of avoid that. So there's a lot of reasons why I think critics aren't necessarily agreeing. And I think the main one is just that critics tend to be art majors and things like that. They're from the arts. They might be film majors. They might have been a literature major or something like that. They're not the regular people. And so the regular people have a different criteria that they're going to judge a movie by. And that's the main thing. But I think there's also just a little bit more to say about that. And that's that, does that mean that those reviews, because you're part of a general audience and not one of these reviewers, does that mean that those reviews can't be trusted? And the answer is they can be trusted if they're providing you qualitative information that is useful for you in making a consumer decision. And that's what I really tried to do well with my first Last Jedi review. I tried to provide that quality consumer information. If you wanted to go see a big blockbuster movie with some amazing special effects and great sound design and just a very visually exciting movie with the Star Wars aesthetic, Last Jedi is a movie that you probably shouldn't have missed in theaters. If you wanted a good story, or if a bad story was going to make you seriously object to the visuals, then Last Jedi was not a movie for you. And that's kind of the line that I drew, and I think that's a pretty appropriate line, and I try to be pretty clear about that. So hopefully, even if that person might have watched a video of mine and seen that review and liked The Last Jedi and have agreed with my review even though I didn't like it, that's where you're talking good consumer information. So if a reviewer is providing you the information that you need as a consumer to know whether or not you're going to like a movie, then it is useful, even if they're approving of a movie that you won't like, or that they're disapproving of a movie that you will like. Last thing I'll say about Bright before I kind of cut this off. One of the things I noticed, I try not to read reviews of movies, especially if I intend to see it, but I couldn't help it because I kept seeing all these negative reviews, and I'm like, I got to see what these people are saying about this. And one thing I'll say is that a lot of people didn't understand. They thought the movie has got, it's got like fantasy. It's an urban fantasy movie. And so I got the impression that most of the people who were looking at this movie were confused by that setting because they weren't familiar with it in other settings. They didn't know that like urban fantasy is like a literary genre, or they just weren't used to those things being mixed together the way they are in like anime and some other things. So I kind of got this impression that they just were off put by the weirdness of the setting and didn't really have that much more to say about it, because I feel like they're bad reviews because I can't glean enough information to know whether I'd like the movie or not. And so that kind of sends a signal to me as well that there's a lot of bad reviews out there. There's a lot of reviews that you can't trust. It depends on the qualitative information that they're actually providing to you. If they're telling you what is not good about the movie and what things they really object to when they dislike a movie, then that helps you, because I could tell you all day that the story for The Last Jedi sucked, but if you don't care about the story, that's not going to impact you. And what is going to impact you is like the experience of the sound design and the spaceships. And if that's what you want, I'm not gonna like judge you horribly for wanting a particular experience if that's the sort of sensory experience that you want. I may seek a different one, but I still want to provide you with enough information to make that decision for your own wants and needs. And that's kind of what I'm getting to there. So can critics be trusted? Only if they are making good qualitative judgments about a film, then they can be trusted, but you can trust them whether they disagree with you or not, if they're providing good information. And you have to figure that out as a consumer on a critic by critic basis. You can't say, well, all the critics like it. You find a critic that you agree with, maybe it's me or some other person that does even more movie reviews than I do, that says that talks about the things that you want to know to see a movie, and then you can make your decision for your box office. I probably can't watch a ton of box office movies because of my life situation. I have a young child, but find a reviewer who does, who like that's the thing that they do, and they're really good at providing that information. I'm going to make a concerted effort in 2018 to be better about that, because I feel like there's a lot of demand for it. So I will do my best to do better with the channel in actually reviewing movies and providing that analysis and that good information. And hopefully you'll be around with me to give me your opinions and point me in some of these directions, like with this particular video here. So thank you so much for watching, and please do let me know what you want to see and what you want to hear in the future, because I do take that into account. I don't have a Patreon up yet. I'll probably get one up in 2018, and I appreciate people inquiring about that. I hate to say, like, hey, I have no way for you to give me money other than buy my books. But that brings me to my last thing, which is, my next book is coming out in January. I'm got a whole marketing thing that I'm going to talk about on the channel to give you some information on how I'm going to approach this book launch. And it's actually 3 books, and I'll talk about that. But you can get all of those for free. You can get all 3 of the books for free if you get on my list, dvspress.com/list, and hop on either one of those, either the freebie list or the general list, which will include information about videos and things like that. Both of those are good. And I'll see you guys next time. I hope you guys have a great day.